Welcome back then to the Asylum. It's me, Gunnar, in a chair of doom, joined as always by my able compatriot CK. All right, fella?
All right, hello.
How are you?
Yeah, very well, very excited. Looking forward to this one.
Good. And we've also joined on the line as well by Hugh Newman. He's a world explorer, Megalithamaniac, author of Earth Grids, The Secret Pattern of Gaia's Sacred Sites, Giants on Record, America's Hidden History. He's also on Ancient Aliens. He's also a thoroughly interesting and lovable chap. Hugh Newman, good evening, fella.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good. How are you, buddy?
Very good, thank you.
Hugh, how have you been? We spoke to you about sort of 9 months ago, didn't we, I think, last time? What have you been up to in the meantime?
Oh, my goodness, quite a bit. Since then, I've been travelling a bit. I've been we're doing a few excursions with JJ to various places. Recently got back from Baalbek in Lebanon and Byblos in Lebanon, and also Egypt, and also been traveling around Mexico, and late last year we were in Peru with an extended stay in Bolivia to do some research, and found some fascinating things there actually while I was there that have never been recorded. So I'll happily have a little chat about them today. And we've got the big conference coming up on 12th, 13th of May in Glastonbury, the big Megalithamania event. So that I'm planning that carefully and getting prepped for that.
Who's speaking this year at Megalithamania?
We've got Andrew Collins. He's going to be launching his new book, The Cygnus Key. We've got Professor Terence Meaden, who's looking at different aspects and new discoveries in archaeoastronomy. Richard Casaro is coming over from Spain to do a couple of lectures about ancient the triptych temples and the God Self icon. JJ Ainsworth, she's going to be doing a talk about ancient symbolism. Gary Bilcliffe with his new book, The Power of Centre, and a whole bunch of other people. Thomas Sheridan as well, coming over from Ireland, amongst others.
It looks amazing. Andrew Collins, of course.
It's an awesome lineup.
Huge name.
It's pretty good this year. Yeah, we've got quite a number. We do like to kind of keep it interesting, keep people coming back, because it's just one of those subjects, the mystery of the megaliths, which enthralls all of us.
Hey, Hugh, how long has this been going now, the Megalithamania conference?
Started it way back in 2006. That was our first one in Beltane, 2006. It was actually inspired and co-founded really with John Michel, who's like one of my my mentors, and one of my most favorite authors. And also John Martineau and Gareth Mills. John Martineau being my current publisher actually with the Wooden Book series. But they kind of stepped away from it, and I've been working at it on my own pretty much since 2010. But I have a great team. It's a really good fun event.
And speaking of Beltane, Hugh, I understand you were at Glastonbury Tour recently with the Druids.
Very recently, yeah, yesterday morning about 5 a.m. I just gave up on sleeping and just drove straight there, and just met the Druids up on the tour for sunrise. Yeah, it's good, and it's like,
what do they do up there?
Well, it's the Glastonbury Order of Druids, and the Arch Druid is Rollo Moffling. He's the one who's often at Stonehenge, and they had their 30-year anniversary of going up the tour and celebrating, and and just saying, just welcoming in the sun, welcoming in the different, this change of the year, halfway between the equinox and the solstice, all like fertility energy. And up there, they just have they do like a ceremony. They have hand fasting, so whoever wants to get hand fasted, and various poems and songs. And then there's these Morris dancers from another group come up and do the whole Morris dancing troupe. So it's like going back in time, really. You go up the tour, you go to Stonehenge on the solstice, you like go back in time to what was going on, like potentially thousands of years ago. So to me, keeping these traditions alive is important. It's as important as studying and trying to work out what these megaliths are all about. So I think what they're doing is a fantastic thing, and I respect them for that.
Hugh, why is it important to keep these traditions alive, and is that part of it?
Well, I just think it is, because they've been around for so long. People don't even know where they really came from. I mean, all over the country, there's stuff going on. And it's just, if people stop doing it, it will get forgotten and lost. It's that simple. And so, and I think people have got a connection with it, that they've got a real connection with these sites. They want to feel like there's a spiritual aspect. and they've got a connection to the earth and the energies and the turnings of the year that were worshipped, in ancient times. Specifically pagan kind of principles, but really a lot of Christian and other modern religious principles are based upon these older principles. And so, there's a lot to say for that. Forget the Wicker Man thing. I mean, the bit in that, it's nothing like that anymore. But it does get a bit crazy down in the place called Padstow in Cornwall. They have the largest Beltane festival of all. Yeah, they have the biggest one ever. Like 30,000 people turn up for it. I was going to go down there, but it was just a bit far this time. So I wanted to.
It's quite far.
Yeah, so I wanted to just be with the Druids. They're friends of mine. They're the guys who always go to Stonehenge, and so yeah, it was good. And I think and I just want to support them because I think what they're doing is fantastic.
Oh, brilliant. Gunnar, I wanted to play a quick game because we talked about this the other day. We said we did like top fives, but also I want to do with Hugh and with you like the most recent megalithic site you visited.
Oh, good question. Mine's going to be
we'll do
like
a little round table.
The last megalithic site.
Yeah.
Well, I think I've got to be honest with you, the most recent megalithic site I visited it's got to be Baalbek in Lebanon, I think. I mean, that was
a pretty fair answer, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's also pretty much the biggest stones on the planet. But I think that was the last megalithic site. I mean, I've been to Glastonbury Tor. I've been to a couple of places, but they're not really megalithic. I haven't been to Stonehenge since I've got back, so it's got to be Baalbek, and that was literally the last site we visited on our Baalbek tour back in late March.
Oh, that's pretty damn good, isn't it? That's a good one.
I knew it'd be on that list, and I know yours will be something similar, Chris. Yours will be some amazing place around the world, and mine be like, I went to a stone circle in the UK a couple of months back.
We'll have to ask Hugh if this one qualifies. But Hugh, I recently visited Menam Toll in Cornwall.
Yeah, that's like a megalithic site. It's quite small megaliths, sort of more like liths, but still one of the most important sites in the whole of Britain. So yeah, that is definitely.
There's nothing like it, really, is there? It's a bit weird, that one.
It's a bit weird, and it's remote. You got to walk quite a way to try and find it. It's really hard to find if you don't have good maps. It's not particularly well signposted. It wasn't when I was there last time, anyway. And no doubt you crawled through the stone.
Of course.
Yes. Yes. Another tradition.
Oh, this is the hole in the stone, isn't it? I know what you sent me a picture, didn't you, Chris, about this?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And that's like a tradition of healing and fertility, that where you pass your baby through the stone several times, right. They get healed. If you go through it, you can get healed and all this kind of stuff. It helps girls and women become more fertile, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, these properties that are said to exist at these sites really do. There's scientific evidence to back all that up now, and this is one of the reasons Beltane is so important, because what they used to do a long time ago is light up beacons across the country on these high hilltops. Incidentally, Glastonbury Tor probably being one of them, all along the St Michael line, going way down into Cornwall, St Michael's Mount, these different tours you get, all the way up to East Anglia. And so there is a tradition of that, and the Michael line actually aligns to Beltane or May Day sunrise as well, along the whole alignment, the eastern facing alignment. And so there's something to be said about that even at these stones. This is what I've been writing about recently, is like looking at these giant traditions, but also these other traditions I've been looking at, where you find like always attached to certain sites, and you got to question why. And there's often because they actually do that. There's actual facts that now science is starting to back up with the healing, with the fertility, and things like this.
Go on then, Gunnar. You haven't got away with it.
What was my site?
We haven't heard it yet. We're waiting.
Do you know? I'm trying to think now. I like Wall in Lichfield, of course, but that's a Roman site. I like a lot of the archaeology in Staffordshire, as you know, Chris. But I reckon the last one I went to was probably, I did the Stonehenge tour. So I went to Avebury, Stonehenge, and Old Sarum, which are three of my favourite sites in the entire UK. But on that note, Hugh, how important is the UK? How important is the archaeology in the UK, and how important is that history in a context of the world? Because I know you go all around the world, don't you, looking at these mysteries?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, no. Britain is like, to me, it's the, it's the centre of it all, really. And you got some of the oldest stuff here in Ireland. You got extremely ancient stuff just near me in Amesbury, and also at Stonehenge. You got post holes that go back 10,000 years, for instance. But you got a unique thing going on in Britain. You've got these stone circles, which there's been 1,000 recorded stone circles in Britain. No other country has anywhere near that amount. Apart from Britain, it's got a lot of cromlechs, often like semicircles rather than full circles. But you do find, stone circles all over the world. But there's something about the British ones, especially Stonehenge and Avebury. They're the key ones, really. But there's others. I mean, there's so many. They're very impressive. They're all different types of rock, bringing stone from different parts of the country to construct them, all with different geometries. And I think it's really, I mean, Stonehenge is probably the most visited site in Britain. I think the only thing that comes close is Buckingham Palace. And so you have to kind of,
It is Britain's #1 tourist attraction. You're quite right. I remember somebody telling me this the other day. It's because someone did a little quiz and they said, "What's the most visited tourist attraction in Britain?" And they get Buckingham Palace, Tower of London, Houses of Parliament, and I didn't realise that it was so popular. Stonehenge.
That's it. I mean, this is why Britain is important. It's got. I mean, you look at places like Orkney. You've got the sites in Ireland or Newgrange and all that lot. You've got everywhere you go, there's something to explore in the megalithic sense. But you look at megalithic sites like in France or Germany or Denmark. People don't know much about them. There's really, even though the ones in Brittany and France are 2 or 3 times bigger on average than anything in Britain.
This is Karnak, isn't it?
Yeah, and everything over there is like supersized. It's incredible, but no one really knows about it. No one's that interested. So, but yeah, I mean, England is like it's just got this deep sort of history. It's got this deep kind of pagan thing. It's got all the King Arthur stuff. It's got the legends of the giants. It's got all this mystery, and it is, to me, it's like the center of it all.
So just describe for us, Hugh, those that don't know Karnak, I mean, we're talking about miles worth of stones, hundreds, if not thousands of stones, all lined up intricately.
Oh my God.
I mean, tell us a little bit about it. It's an amazing location, isn't it? Are you saying that the French don't perhaps perceive it in the same way as other cultures around the world do, or perhaps the way we do in this country?
I think it's just like taken for granted, maybe. I mean, I've been there a few times. I spent time with my friend and brilliant researcher called Howard Crowhurst. He lives there. He's actually from Yorkshire, and he speaks at Megalithamania frequently. But yeah, we've been there a few times, and it's just outrageous. It's like when you first go to Baalbek, it's just outrageous, the size of things. And you've got to remember, like 80% of it has been demolished and removed or buried or destroyed. And what's left is outrageously vast. You got stone rows that go on for hundreds and hundreds of meters. Often, I think some of them are like a kilometer or a mile long. And there's huge, it's some of the largest mounds ever constructed. You got some of the largest stones that make up dolmens on the planet, and they're just everywhere in Karnak and Brittany and Ploermel and other similar areas all around the area. You've even got stuff under the water there.
Right. I was going to say this, Stu. I was going to ask you, do you think that it's maybe part of the, we include Doggerland in this, and that actually this is something that stretched from France to the UK and was active at a time when you could walk from Britain, from Ireland to France?
Yeah, I mean, because the shortest distance isn't very far from like Dover to Calais, is it? So, yeah, I mean, all the area north of there, you do have this whole idea of Doggerland, and there's, I would imagine, there's a whole megalithic world buried in the mud there that we are going to discover, and it's going to blow people away. It's like Britain's Atlantis, I think there's going to be quite a lot of stuff going on there, and I think it was connected. I think that the two countries were connected, but for some reason, as you go down into France, everything just gets bigger. I've got no idea why. It's almost like it's American or something. It's just everything is like massive, supersized. You get like the tallest monolith on the planet was there. You get other ones just still standing, which are like 50 feet high and things like this. It's just something else. But I bet you there's going to be discoveries made in between these two countries.
Oh, and I can't wait to see some of it. They've already begun to make some discoveries, haven't they? They know that halfway out, I guess, where Doggerland is, halfway between like the UK and, say, Sweden or something like this, they've found archaeology, haven't they? They've found like sort of habitations or tools and stuff like this.
Yeah,
I think research is happening on that. Yeah, but it's just so muddy, probably, and like covered in mud and seaweed and all this kind of stuff that it's probably really hard to get the data.
When you're getting the scuba gear on. I totally want to go on that.
Is that the next campaign? Next campaign, dry suits, Megalithomania dry suits.
Oh, mate, no. Go on.
Yeah. You get some submarines. Let's go exploring. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hugh, I mean, because you've just said it there, isn't it? You know, the stuff that goes on in France is crazy. The stuff that goes on in the UK is crazy. Do you think there's a wider history towards our European heritage that we really don't understand? I know that you probably believe that to some degree, but how far does that go?
Yeah, I mean, well, you look at Brittany, you look at Karnak, and some of the sites there are extremely ancient. People don't realize this, but some of them are like sort of 6,000 BC, stuff like this.
Wow.
You know, even older. There's older evidence there of stone construction. So you're talking about 8,000 years potentially of, you know, where it all began. The only things over here that are old or slightly older are the wooden post holes at Stonehenge, which are weird in themselves. And also where, you know, near where I'm based, Amesbury and Stonehenge, this whole area here is the oldest continually inhabited part of Britain for 12,000 years. So in France, you've got like, you know, extremely large megalithic sites being constructed at 6,000 to 5,000 BC. All along the coast going into Europe and Portugal and Spain, you have some very, you know, quite large constructions that are very old. In Portugal, you get stuff that's like 4,000 to 5,000 BC near Évora, which is like central South Portugal. But in France, I think it's, you know, it may megalithic construction may actually have originated there, but there's new evidence coming forth actually up in Orkney, you know, the very top of Scotland, the very northern coast. Visited Orkney last summer, had a week up there when they were excavating the Ness of Brodgar, and interviewed all the archaeologists and so forth. And that is a stunning place, and they've now realised that everything up there is at least 3,500 BC, you know, which is not that old, but they're finding stuff that's even older than that, going into like Mesolithic times, going back to like 6,000 to 8,000 BC. We're not sure if there's megalithic construction there, but certainly very it's very ancient activity, which people didn't realize because they thought it was covered in ice when actually it wasn't at certain points. And so, yes, and there's definitely, you know, thanks to people like Alexander Thom back in the 50s and 60s who were measuring everything and looking at the astronomy and metrology and the geometry, they found, you know, direct, you know, correlations between Orkney, Scotland, England, and France, you know, all following the same principles, as though the same teachers, the same elite were building and, you know, designing these sites. So there's definitely connections there.
Hugh, do you think, I mean, it almost sounds sort of the picture that you're painting is maybe the UK was like a bolt hole, a last refuge?
That's possible. Yeah, you could say that, but it seems like a lot of the sites in Britain, it's almost like it all began, not exactly, but it seems like a lot of, you know, the megalithic ideas began up in Orkney and northern Scotland, sort of filtered downwards. The reason people have been saying that for the last couple of years is because of the grooved ware pottery. It's this type of pottery with a certain style, certain grooves and shapes on them and things like this, which is the oldest they found is up in Orkney, and then slightly younger than that they found it down south. And so they're thinking now there might have been, you know, you could have gone from France and travel around the coast, avoiding getting arrows thrown at you from the coast and all this kind of stuff, and then ended up in Orkney. And so who knows, you know, no one's really sure, but, you know, the information is just starting to like come forth with proper dating, DNA testing, and there's even a whole BBC 3-part series last year about Orkney and about, you know, how things may even originate from there. And there's some amazing discoveries being made. They've, you know, this Ness of Brodgar site, which I'm going to go back to every year because they excavate it for 2 months in the summer, is astonishing, absolutely astonishing, because they didn't only find one of the geometric stone balls there, stone spheres that I've been researching, but they found, you know, a level of house construction. It's almost like they were building complexes of buildings in stone, living in them, studying in them, and it almost seems like an ancient university was at place up there. And this is where the ideas of all the ancient measurement systems, the geometry we find all over Britain, the geomancy and the geodesy, the location of sites as well. Like a big survey was being carried out, possibly from up there, and obviously Avebury and Stonehenge were part of that. There's in fact an alignment I discovered from a place called the Nap of Hower, which is on Papua West Ray. It's an island just off Orkney. Some brilliant research has been done by a friend of mine called Nicholas Cope. He spoke at Megalithamania last year about all the geometry up there. And that dates back to at least 3,600, 3,700 BC. But there's an alignment from there all the way down to Avebury. And if you could, all the way down to West Kennet Longbarrow. And if you continue it down a bit further, it goes directly to Stonehenge. And so that really intrigued me, because West Kennet Longbarrow is the same dating as the site Nap of Hower on Papua West Ray, 3,600 or so BC. And then it connects with Stonehenge, almost like Stonehenge was the later point. But weirdly, maybe Stonehenge was the beginning point, because you've got the post holes there, which are 10,000 years old. So, so it's a bit confusing, but there's all these correlations. All of us, tons of us are trying to put together, but we keep finding things that seem to make sense, but it's not part of the traditional historical record.
Well, getting back to Stonehenge, I know you're part of a big campaign at the moment. Tell us a little bit more about it. I mean, there's this A303 tunnel that's been planned by Highways UK. What exactly is it they're planning to do?
Yeah, that's a bit of an issue. Basically, there's an issue. The A303. Apparently, people don't like the A303 road. This is, for people that don't know, it's the road that goes basically, pretty much from the east of the country to the west of the country. It's not a motorway. It's just a 2-lane road. So it gets blocked up. There's lots of traffic sometimes. I live extremely close to the A303, right near Stonehenge, so I know that the traffic's not that bad. I literally see it. I can see it now, for God's sake. And so I know it's not that bad. But they claim it's the worst thing ever. The road was built in the late 60s. So what they want to do is completely grass over the road and build a huge tunnel underneath the whole World Heritage Site. They want to dig inside the World Heritage Site. Wow. It's about half a mile, maybe a mile at the most, from Stonehenge Stone Circle. On the other side, it's going to come out inside the World Heritage Site. So they're actually drilling and boring into the chalk, and they claim they're going to go so deep it won't affect any archaeology, because it's going to go deep down into the solid chalk. But this isn't true, because I've looked at the maps. I went to this big meeting in Salisbury. This consult, it's only like 20 people there, which baffled me. And I looked at the depths of the different levels of where they're going to be boring through the chalk. And, under my house, the tunnel's going to go, for starters, which is slightly literally under my house and garden. I'm like, what? So I'm going to have, so I've been given special documents and, certain things.
That's an interesting. Times. I was going to say that must be really interesting for you as a researcher who's interested in a campaigner for this as well, because you're going to get access to sort of interesting documents, I guess.
Well, it's just going to be like, if anyone's, you remember Arthur Dent, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and his gown lying in front of bulldozers, that kind of vibe. So Highways Agency, just so you know, that's what I'm going to be doing if it comes to it.
Hugh Newman on the front page of the newspaper, chained to the stones.
But it's just strange. It's going to go under the property here. It's actually going to go underneath my neighbours as well. And also, actually, there's National Trust property just down the road from us. So that really, I couldn't believe it when I looked at the detailed maps. And then they're going to cut off the road, so from here you can't drive west. You have to go all the way down through Amesbury, under the tunnel, drive under my house, and then head west, which I don't really want to do for starters personally. But there's bigger issues at play here, because if they're going to build a tunnel, and I've been working with Arthur Pendragon, he's like the sort of arch druid of Stonehenge, also known as King Arthur. He changed his name by Deepol, and he is amazing. Whatever anyone says about him, not only does he do amazing druid ceremonies and all this at Stonehenge, but he's actually the spokesperson really for this whole campaign, and he's the one who's making sure everyone knows about it. So I've been supporting him, promoting everything they do to support this. A Stonehenge Alliance website people can look at. You can just Google Stonehenge Alliance. Now all the consultation is over now, so you can't say anything to Highways Agency or anyone else, but you can still sign petitions. And so whatever country you're in, whether you're abroad or in Britain, you can go to Stonehenge Alliance, just Google that and you'll find it. And there's two petitions you can sign, one for people outside of Britain, other for people in Britain. So just go there, everyone who's listening, and do that, at least do that. I think you can still write to the National Trust. If you go on the Stonehenge Alliance website, you can still cause a stir. There's all these pre-formatted letters you can send to various different people. You can just type in your name, put a few details in, throw your opinion in, and it will send automatically. So you don't have to spend hours writing letters, going down the post office, all this kind of stuff. So I do recommend people do that, because it's a problem. Because number one, at the eastern end of the tunnel, they're going to be digging right near the entrance. It's going to be right near a place called Blickmead. Now, why this is important? Because this is
Ice Age.
Yeah, this is
the place, isn't it?
Years old.
Yeah, this is the oldest habitation.
Yeah, this is Amesbury, and Blickmead is on the edge of Amesbury. And it's next to this old camp, this Iron Age camp as well. But this Blickmead place is like this sort of flint trading, distribution and mining centre, and it's huge. It's one of the most important sites in Britain at the moment. There's been a huge amount of archaeology done on it. All these archaeologists are complaining about stuff just like I am. And then at the other end, even near here as well, they're going to be digging straight under mounds, like tumuli that are in the landscape. And at the other end, they come up right near a bunch of very important mounds near Winterbourne Stoke, which is the western side of where the tunnel will come up. And literally, they're going to be digging, there's going to be a huge tunnel within about 150, maybe 200 meters of Stonehenge stone circle. Wow. It's close. People don't realize how close it is.
That's very close. I mean, when you look at the pictures put out by the Highways Agency, you'd have no clue that it was that close to the monument.
It's more or less going where the 303 is, A303, which is quite close.
So there's an island, isn't there? At the bottom of the A303, there's an island, which is basically intersects the avenue. And this is where the tunnel's coming up, isn't it? Just sort of west of Amesbury.
That's Countess Roundabout. So it's going to be this side. It's going to be like the western side of the roundabout. This is right near Blickmead. It's also where the old avenue goes through, which is the avenue that lies to the solstice that comes through Stonehenge. Yeah. The heel stone, then it continues and it goes all the way around. It curves around, goes back down past the 303, right near where the tunnel entrance is supposedly going to be, and all the way down to Amesbury, down to the river Avon. In Amesbury, and there's a private bit of land there where there used to be another stone circle called Blue Stonehenge, where it was a smaller stone circle with a henge, and this was made of the blue stones, the spotted dolerite that comes from the Preseli. And this then the river joins up with Durrington and Woodhenge, which is further northeast from Stonehenge. So there's a lot of, the way they're doing it. Number one, it's going to cost £1.6 billion of the taxpayers' money. Wow. Number two, but that's not much.
Like half a
I'd want more of a say, really. If you're going to be spending taxpayers' money, I want more of a say.
But saying that, what they should do, this is one idea that people are saying. If they have to build a tunnel, if it has to be done, they could just put the entrances half a mile or a mile further away either side and go much deeper.
Yes.
So you're not going to hit any of the World Heritage Site. You're not going to hit any mounds. You're going to go so deep there's no way there'll be any archaeology. That is the only solution if they demand a tunnel being built. The other option is don't do anything and have a party with the £1.6 billion.
I would go to that party. That sounds like a good party.
Yeah, and I'll be putting it on as well. And
so you're right. Let's not pay to pray.
But this is important though. So it's just like this whole thing. There's no need for it. And what it does, the other thing, the big thing people are going to realise that they're never going to be able to see Stonehenge again from the road ever. And you're going to have to pay to go into Stonehenge to see it.
Do you think that might be a motivation there then? But for the national heritage,
Yeah, well, for English heritage, it's definitely a motivation because everyone's going to have to pay to go in and go to their visitor centre and get the buses and all this kind of stuff. And they're going to hike the prices up and this, that, and the other. And it's not fair. People, it's so enjoyable to be able to once it's gone, then you're going to know what's missing. It's that whole thing.
Yeah,
it's so
that's one of my favourite things about megaliths is
seeing them from the road.
Well, no, it's that actually, apart from Stonehenge, they are all free.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
you can just go and visit them. Yeah, it's very few of them that you have to pay to go and see. You mostly might have
English
to do a
heritage, Chris.
Well, you might have to do a bit of walking, a bit of trekking off the beaten track, but there are so many sites that you can visit for free to get a connection to our ancient past.
I agree. But the thing is, it's like, it's going to cause issues, loads of issues that have not been addressed. These are all on that website. Everyone's writing about them.
Yeah.
I've bought a load up. I'm filling out all these forms. I'm going to have to go to some meetings. Got people coming to visit me. I'm going to be like the guy who kind of gets in their way as best I can, because I don't think it's a good idea. I live here and I know the road isn't that bad. Because of all the traffic, the traffic's kind of slow. And no one's beeping their horns. No one's bothered about it. They know Stonehenge is there. That's where everyone slows down.
Takes a good look.
Like for that view to go is really depressing. What I suggest is don't do anything and spend 1.6 billion or less removing the roads from the middle of Avebury and creating a bypass around Avebury.
Yes.
So then Avebury becomes like as it should be. Leave the village there and the church and post office and all that, but just have it as pedestrian and build a road around that somewhere to get the farmers to give a bit of their land.
Well, surely that 1.6 billion could buy a few farmers' fields.
Exactly.
This is what we discussed earlier, Chris, isn't it? Is the amount of archaeology. If you to move the road or move the tunnel, you're still going to be going through that archaeology somewhere else. Obviously, you've got the RAF base to the north, which kind of cuts off any potential sort of work as well. But Hugh, would you suggest it would be better if it started at the Longbarrow roundabout and finished at the Countess roundabout, so they extended basically about another half a mile in either direction?
Even more than that. I mean, but to be honest with you, I don't think it's a good idea generally, because they want to build a flyover over the Countess roundabout. So suddenly it's going to be really noisy, juggernauts going really fast right near Amesbury, and it's all going to become really loud, really busy. There's probably going to be queues going into the tunnel and things like this. They're probably going to make it a toll thing eventually, so you have to stop. And I don't know what's going to happen. And so they want to do this huge flyover. You're not going to be able to easily get in and out of Amesbury. Amesbury's going to become inundated. People living up here are going to get trapped, and they have to do this private gate thing, so you can't even get in and out easily. It's a bit of a nightmare. It hasn't been thought out, basically, especially with the archaeology that could be damaged. Because this road, even though it cuts right through the World Heritage Site, it's not doing any harm, really. There's no harm being done. It's so thin. It's only 2 lanes. It's nice and thin. There's no. That's
nice and steady.
Could it be widened?
Flying down.
Is that one of the options, Hugh?
Because there's so much archaeology just to either side of it, and they can't really do that. No, and it would make it much more hectic here. Because
it looks to me, when you look at the road, and it only being 2 lanes, it's kind of like they've picked a path through the archaeology. Because obviously it's only on the surface, it's not really going to damage stuff if you go around it. And it seems to me that's what the road's done. It kind of cuts right the way through it, doesn't it? But widen it potentially then runs a risk, or moving the road as well into the adjacent fields also runs a risk of potentially cutting right the way through the middle of some of these archaeological sites.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of issues. I mean, it just hasn't been thought out properly. They're trying to rush this through. I mean, they're not going to start building for another 5 years. But, I'm giving a fair warning. I'm going to be out there in my dressing gown, my cup of tea. Doing what I can.
You're a druid. You're just going to be in a dressing gown.
But yes, so this is all going on. So this is something that people should be aware of. I mean, it's not been on any news. They're not. It's
hardly ever been.
It's occasionally.
Is it one of those who have they played their classic trick of? There are lots of meetings you can attend, but most of them are on a Tuesday at 11:30 or 2 p.m. I mean, really awkward times where most people can't really get to them.
No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, they put this on at this church hall in Salisbury, on the outskirts of Salisbury. No one knows where it was. It should be in this is a national issue. It's not just a Salisbury issue.
It's a worldwide issue.
It should be huge meetings at like major venues in London and Birmingham and Edinburgh to talk about this, and to have big events, free events,
Absolutely.
So people can get the knowledge, have archaeologists speaking about it. And it's just not done like that at all. It's a joke, really. And the people, I've met the people. I've met the main construction engineer, the top dog, a guy called Mr. Bullock. I've met some people who work for, the companies, and they couldn't answer basic questions that I asked them, and so I was kind of thinking, Christ, if you can't even answer these questions,
Ooh, shit.
affecting the people who actually live here, I just think, maybe it's serendipity that I ended up, living in this particular spot, and I'm right on top. I'm pretty much the only person, the only house that's going to be that close to it. There might be more of a larger purpose for me moving here, because I'm going to do my best to stop this. But yeah, anyway, that's, I think there's enough on that. If people just go to the Stonehenge Alliance website. If they can check out my YouTube channel, I made a little video at the meeting. I spoke to Arthur Pendragon about it, and he gave his views, and I got views of a few other people, and I've tried to make that, get that out there to educate people about what's going on. But yeah, it's just a bit worrying, really, but you've got to address these things, quickly. Before.
Yeah, absolutely.
The scary thing is, Hugh, is that they might slip it past the public without anybody realising the gravitas of the situation. And this is, one of my concerns, one of the things I wanted to come back to was this idea that by building this tunnel, and it's almost kind of like they sell it to the public, like, hey, we fixed the issue with Stonehenge, and it's like, no, actually, you're potentially going to make it a lot worse. Do you think, Hugh, that there's a bit of an ignorance towards perhaps the earth energies that exist within the Stone Age landscape?
I mean that all that kind of thing is completely ignored. There's no concerns about that. There's no, China and other places where feng shui is still used in the construction industry, incidentally. There's no way any of that's going to be. They're not going to consult geomancers and dowsers and things like that. It ain't going to happen. They don't believe in that kind of thing. But that's fair enough. But I think we need to kind of just unfortunately the deadline's gone to hand in your thing for the consultation and all that. But there's still ways to do stuff. But yeah, they completely ignore that kind of thing. And it's just unfortunate that people are not going to realise the implications of it until it's done. And so stuff has to be done now, 5 years in advance, to address this.
Why ignore them, Hugh? Is it because they don't believe in the science behind it, or is it because they're just trying to slip it past because they want it done?
Yeah, but a bit of both. But I think people just aren't aware of it being a problem. They don't realise all the details. They don't have time to think about that. It's just too much to think about. They don't realise that now when they drive, east and west through Wiltshire, they're never going to see Stonehenge again unless they pay lots of money to English Heritage to go and see it.
Do you think the road should remain then? Do you think the road should remain and a tunnel should be built if you wish to bypass?
Just leave it. Just leave it as it is. There's no problem.
There's no problems. I've just thought of a plan though, Hugh. If you really want to make sure those builders don't dig underneath your house, when you're wearing your dressing gown, just forget your pajamas.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
maybe.
I'll put that one in the maybe pile.
Hugh, Howard, I know you did a book, obviously, about earth grids. I know Maria Wheatley has also looked into this from her late father and her dowsing work. How much of an impact could this tunnel have on that landscape? Will it ultimately change that landscape? Because whenever I go to that area, and I think anybody that goes to this area, whether you're from the UK or from further afield, it's like entering a church. The moment you enter the landscape, you feel it kind of bleeding out the ground. Will that change with this? Could that change with this?
I don't know. Well, you just imagine having 5 or 6 lanes or whatever it's going to be, massive juggernauts going 70 to 90 miles an hour, booming through the land, underneath. It's just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem it's correct. I think, because there's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit here at the moment. There's only 2 lanes. Everyone always slows down all the time. So it's not an issue because, people aren't going over 50 miles an hour generally. So I think it's just going to have an effect on so many things. You imagine them boring a tunnel through. What if they find stuff under there and that they haven't been able to
We were talking about this earlier, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. Yeah,
we think we've heard from a couple of other archaeologists and researchers in recent years how stuff can be found, dug up, excavated, taken out, and it claimed to be found in another site, and then there's no problem. You don't need an archaeological research team to go in there and stop all the work. If you find it somewhere else, then it doesn't matter.
The one site in particular we were talking about, Chris, this idea that they knew it was there, and it was yet to be excavated. But because some sort of building work wanted to take place, it was now convenient that this location was found. And then actually, as far as the public are concerned, they've been told that this location is somewhere else, about 10 miles to the east of it. And it was actually found at a different location. It was because of this building work that was going on. That's a bit of a worry, isn't it, Hugh? Sort of that sort of stuff. Or is there a possibility that they could do this here with the landscape being so historic and so ancient? Could they find something underneath, and rather than stop production or stop sort of building of this tunnel, actually suggest that it was found elsewhere, or actually have it pulled out and made a thing? Or will that make more problems for them further down the road because it will draw attention?
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you. That is, but the problem is they can scan. They've done a lot of scanning on the surface, so they don't think they found much underneath. But the problem is you've got Blickmead. You see, I think Blickmead is like potentially extremely important, and it's not been really thoroughly excavated. It's only had a few things done. And I think the antiquity of this landscape is so ancient that it's just don't mess with it anymore. I mean, the only people who are going to gain from this are the construction company and English Heritage. They're the only ones. No one else is going to gain. No one cares about a little bit of slow traffic here and there. You get that on the M25, but they're not going to build loads of tunnels there, are they? So, I don't really see the point personally.
Fair enough. Just quickly, we're talking about breaking up those energy grids. I mean, what were these energy grids, and do you think that they were being used by ancient cultures like the people who built Stonehenge?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were most certainly working with the natural earth energies and the underground water and the telluric currents and things like this. I think there's a science now to back that up. Thanks to people like John Burke, who sadly passed away a few years ago, and people like Philip Callahan who've done research on this. And it's a genuine, real thing. And I think the ancients, the way they worked with, to get certain type of energy, manipulating it to enhance seeds, grains, and crops, to enlighten oneself, to, altered states of consciousness. They were working with these natural currents of energy, and you can see that in the design of sites like Stonehenge, like Avebury, like even pyramids and other such things. That was part of the plan. And even all these mounds as well, we find all over the Stonehenge landscape. That was part of it as well. It's part of like a sort of network to like keep almost like what John Michel would call an enchantment of the landscape intact. By making sure everything's manipulated. They used to layer the mounds with different types of chalk, different types of organic, non-organic materials. They're almost like orgone accumulators, like Wilhelm Reich's designs. And so I think, the way compared to we work now, we have electricity, we have the Wi-Fi, we have all these invisible energies that we use now every day and we take for granted. We don't even know properly how, certain things work, but we still use them every day. I think the ancients, the elite, the astronomer priests, the people who are building these sites did understand that. They understood these invisible energies like our scientists and designers and engineers do today. And they built them into the sites and into the landscape to last, hence building with huge stones. So they would last for multiple generations and keep this persistent, almost like immortal energy flowing. And I think that was part of the plan. So obviously Stonehenge is part of that, Avebury is part of that. All the sites around Britain may be all connected like that. And so I think there's certainly something in that, yes.
So if we disrupt that, it's going to cause a problem in that sense? Potentially,
but there's been a lot of disruption already, I can tell you that. Things are messed up in that department all over, everywhere, really. The only place, there's a few places where, pristine remote locations. I mean, this might sound a bit weird to some people, but there's traditions like in Ireland, for instance, and parts of Scotland, excuse me, and parts of Cornwall, of like fairy traditions, and they move along in straight lines and all this kind of stuff. If you build your house or knock down a site which is a fairy fort, a fairy place, you're gonna have extremely bad luck. You might even die. It's not a good idea to mess with the fairies.
The fairy roads as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you get the fairy paths and all this kind of stuff. And so people would often, if they built their house on top of a sort of fairy line or a ley line, which could be the same thing, they'd actually chop a corner off the house to make sure it could go through easily, or leave windows open and stuff like that. So they're aware of like the geomancy of the landscape, whether it's fairies, whether it's actual energies, whether it's a scientific energy that is documented in modern ways, we don't know. But in China, the Far East, we know geomancers work, or feng shui people work with landscape architects and engineers and things like this when they're building stuff, so they don't interfere with the flow of the qi, the yin and the yang energies and all that kind of stuff. Whereas here we don't care. We don't have any awareness of that. So we have lots of negative kind of accumulations of different, natural energies which become like problematic.
Like geopathic stress.
Geopathic stress, things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
And do you think that this could happen to this landscape? Could we see a change in the landscape, as in a darker element, perhaps, or a less magical element, or do you think it forever be those Earth energies to change? Could that have a wider implication for the Earth grids in the UK itself? Because I know obviously the two intersect, don't they? The two intersect. It's the Michael line and the Bolinas line, which you mentioned earlier, which runs north towards those sort of Scottish sites that you mentioned. So could we see a massive impact on that? And could we? Is it even possible then? You were talking about this bad luck, let's say, from cutting through a ferry road. Could we see the same things happen to these guys building the tunnel at Stonehenge? Wouldn't that be weird if that happened?
Oh God, that would be weird. Yeah.
You're getting another 10,000 views on this interview anyway.
Yeah, you never know. You never know what could happen. I mean, it's just. I just think it's time to stop messing with things like this now. Personally, just give it a break. Just focus on other things. There's a million homeless people in Britain. Why can't they just give them all the money, for God's sake? Or give them
and leave as it is.
Why are they worrying about building a stupid tunnel? It's just ridiculous when you think about it.
Do you think that it comes down to? It comes down to business and it comes down to money, ultimately, at the end of the day, not about heritage. Are the councils more concerned about making sure the industry can get from point A to point B and the English heritage can make money from Stonehenge, as opposed to, thousands, if not hundreds? I mean, because I know plenty of people, I've done this myself, we're in the local area, we're driving roughly around Stonehenge, let's take a detour, let's head down the A303, I want to see Stonehenge. Just like you mentioned before, Hugh, so many people do that.
Yeah, it's a national monument. It should be in view. Simple as that. The thing with Stonehenge, the way it's run now by English Heritage, a lot of problems with that at the moment. These are now going public. There's lots of issues. They want a monopoly on this landscape, but there's a problem because National Trust own all the land around the small triangle of land which Stonehenge is on. And so I would prefer National Trust to be running Stonehenge rather than English Heritage, because at least they have a better awareness of landscapes and management. Because Stonehenge is getting damaged the way it's run. It's not good. The way they've dealt with this whole new visitor centre, now they have to run buses up and down this road all the time. So it's like creating more pollution. It's created a lot more problems in different ways. If you've been to Stonehenge recently, one thing you should notice is that when when you've taken back from Stonehenge to the visitor centre, you get off the bus, you're forced to walk in to the store where you buy all the Stonehenge memorabilia, and right in front of you, the first thing you see in the window is a Stonehenge Monopoly board game. And it's just saying, hey, we own Stonehenge, we have a monopoly, and it's rubbing it in everyone's face like a little magic spell. And that is arrogance, and I'm tired of dealing with people who run sites like this, think they own this place. They don't own it. They're custodians, and they're not doing a very good job. So it's other people's duty to step in and do a better job. Entirely my opinion. That
would Stonehenge be better in the hands of the people?
Well, why don't they just let it just be a stone circle in a field? Boom.
Boom. But so many people want to visit, Hugh. So many people want to go and see this ancient site.
I would rotate with my neighbour and a couple of other people. We would go and sit at Stonehenge all day, every day, just to make sure it doesn't get vandalised. You only need 5 people to just willing to do a few hours a day at Stonehenge, and you protect it. Why do you need this huge kind of load of bullshit, to put it bluntly, all around it, all this money you have to pay, all this control, and if you want it privately for your groups, this, that and the other, it's just cost a fortune. Anyway,
are they not happy with it, Hugh, unless they can make money out of it? Is it too important to them as a money making cow?
Well, it's a huge money making operation, yes, that's for sure.
Because the money
funds it funds English heritage.
I was going to say that, The money pretty much funds English heritage, doesn't it? I mean, we're talking like 1.5 million visitors a year, all paying £15 plus £5 parking, plus the Monopoly board game in the gift shop. Yeah.
Well, the online gift shop as well. Don't forget that. They'll sell anything to anyone, won't they?
It's an important thing to remember, though, isn't it, Hugh? That this is far more than it's far more than just something to be made money from. It's far more than let's say. It's something for people to visit from around the world, from America, from China, wherever it is. It's actually, way more important, isn't it, for our social history, for our ancient times, I guess, looking back. And is there a danger with that they just kind of sort of, because the point they're trying to make, they kind of brush this aside, it seems to be like, hey, it's more important that industry gets to where it needs to be. It's more important that people can go and visit it. It's more important that this, that, the other. And what they're actually doing is kind of forgetting the importance of the actual site and the landscape itself.
I'll put it like this: Stonehenge is going to be there long after English heritage have disappeared and died off and gone bankrupt or whatever. It's just like it was there before them. It's going to be there after them. Just give it time.
Hopefully, the next custodians will treat it a bit better.
Well, I think it did pretty well without any custodians for like 4,500 to 5,000 years. So why do they need to kind of think they control it? It's like you just need a few people rotating, just keeping an eye on it. It'd be fine.
Is that the plan, Hugh, to outlast English heritage? To wait until they're gone?
Is that what you're working on? Everything, it's all leading towards
the source of life,
being the custodian of Stonehenge.
Well, I didn't think of it like that. You're putting words in my mouth.
The grand plan. Hugh's sitting in his volcano now. Oh my God,
it's underground volcano.
Yeah. Oh no, they know my plan.
They're going to build a tunnel right through it. Go on.
I'm going to build a tunnel, which damages their tunnel. I think that's the way.
Yeah, just start digging. Get a shovel and start digging.
What you need to do, build a tunnel, Hugh. Dig down into their tunnel, put a glass wall in front of it, and just put a picture of Stonehenge like it used to look. so everyone in the tunnel just slows down to look at this picture of Stonehenge like they used to.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Just put a little, A3 poster up or something.
The website you're referring to, Hugh, is stonehengealliance.org.uk, isn't it? Sorry, if I can get my words out.
I believe so. Yeah.
Stonehenge.org.uk.
Correct. Yeah. And there's multiple things people can look at. I mean, it's not my website or anything, but the people who run it are just on it. They're just doing it, and they're like actually, they're the ones that are going to make it happen. So it's very very good. Yeah.
And Hugh, one last thing on Stonehenge before we move on. I believe there is a private Stonehenge tour as part of your Mysteries of England tour.
Yeah, we do that while we have to. We do that. Yeah. I mean, obviously we can't take people there on the solstice or equinox. It's all a bit hectic. But yeah, we're doing a little tour in July, just a 1 week one. Me and JJ Ainsworth are going to be doing that together. Just look, just all the megalithic sites. Obviously Avebury, Stonehenge, private. We do a little private visit, sunset visit. And we do, places like Uffington, Whitehorse, Wayland, Smithy, Stanton Drew, Glastonbury, all that kind of stuff. We cram it all into about 6 or 7 days. So, yeah, if people want a little tour, based in Amesbury. And we actually stay in this amazing hotel, which is where the Beatles stayed when they filmed the Help film. And
wow.
Oddly enough, yeah. So you might get to stay in John Lennon's bed if you're lucky.
Well, there you go, Gunnar. You were talking about you don't see enough megaliths. Hugh Newman will give you all of them.
And John Lennon's bed.
And John Lennon's bed. And the Beatles.
And the Beatles. Wow. Wow. When's that? That's July, did you say, Hugh?
That's July 15th to the 21st. Incidentally, I think we go into Stonehenge on the evening of the World Cup final.
Really?
Enough. And so if England win it,
English Heritage are going to put screens up on Stonehenge.
But that'd be quite funny if England do win the World Cup, and then we can go and have a little sort of group celebration. Well, it'll only be me in there in our group celebrating probably, but because of all Americans coming over. But,
Hugh, you got more chance of them not building a tunnel. Wales didn't win a World Cup.
Well,
we can dream.
English Heritage going, do you know what? Let's not try and make any money out of this. Let's just enjoy it.
Look, if we win the World Cup, English Heritage will probably score the winner. That's how unlikely that is.
So we're doing that. Yeah, we do the private access, whatever. If we just abide by the rules. We do it all formally because we have to. And Megalithamania is like an official kind of organization, so we want to make it special for the guests who come along. You get people coming in from all. Like we do it at the Megalithamania conference as well on the Monday afterwards or the Friday before. We always do a private access because there's just something about it. You get a chance to go in the stones and experience it as you would any day before, like 1965. You could go up to the stones.
It's funny. What do you think then, Hugh, about the sheer volume of people that go to Stonehenge every year? Is that an issue? Every time I've been, I can't get a decent picture of it because I'm surrounded by people.
Yeah, no, it is a bit of an issue. Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. It's the most impressive, unique. There's nothing like it in Britain. It's nothing like it in the world. It's the only stone circle on the planet that's like that, with the big lintels, the precision circle, the interior design of it, the interior stones and things like this, the avenue, the large, the whole landscape. Nothing like it. It's unique. So I've written a small book on stone circles recently, a few months ago. I think I mentioned it in the last radio thing, and it made me realise that it is completely unique. I mean, Avebury's much bigger. Avebury's so big, they built a village inside it, and they actually met from the biggest stone there. They broke it up and built the entire church from one stone. At Avebury.
Wow! That is some stone.
And there used to be two stone circles inside Avebury.
Yes, that's
right. And then
the
bigger one on the outside. One of those stone circles inside it is roughly the same size as Stonehenge.
Jeez. So and one of them's got a platform, isn't it, in the south side of the circle?
A platform.
That was like a recent discovery or something, they reckon. They reckon there was where that second stone circle was.
There's all sorts of stuff they're discovering there now. They try to destroy it over many different times, Avebury, but they can't. It's just impossible.
It's just too damn big.
It's massive. Hugh, is Avebury arguably a more important site than Stonehenge? And also, do the people who know kind of visit Avebury as opposed to visit Stonehenge because they're going to get that access to the stones?
I think the good thing about Avebury is that you can have the private access, but just every day. But you've got two roads going through it, and it's a main road. Again, I mean, the people who built that, they could have easily built that half a mile to the right or left of Avebury, but they decided to go right through it, and it so annoys me that. So that's why it's all got built up there. But I think they're equally important. I don't think anyone's more important than the other. There's something about Stonehenge, you can't deny it, but there's something about Avebury, just the sheer magnitude, the sort of the magnetic energy of Avebury is quite stunning. If you go there first thing in the morning or you go there at night when it's full moon, you can get the place to yourself.
Yes,
you can. It is possible. Often they open up Stonehenge for the equinoxes and solstices. So what I do, I get there at the front of the queue. Like the minute it opens, and I'm like running into the stone circle.
It's like the kids at Alton Towers, the first ones in the gate.
Yeah, some people queue for the Nemesis, other people queue for the Heelstone.
That's it, man. You just get in there early, solstice or equinox or whatever, and it's just
got to have sharp elbows.
and nowadays, you get the fence is so low. If you want to risk it, you can just jump over and run in there anyway. So, if you just catch it when there's no, but I wouldn't. I don't do that myself.
I definitely don't recommend that one.
I'm a sensible gentleman.
Absolutely. Hugh, I know you were talking earlier. We're gonna maybe move away from Stonehenge a little bit, but still talk about stones. You mentioned stone spheres when you went up to Scotland.
Good point, Chris.
They're strange. I'm going to be doing a lecture about them at the Megalithamania the 12th and 13th. Well, it's going to be on the 13th of May on the Sunday, because I'm just fascinated by them. I've been researching them for years. First came across them when I was reading Keith Critchlow's classic book Time Stands Still, and he did a whole analysis of them and found that. Well, firstly, let me just describe them a little bit first for people who don't know. They're like the size of tennis balls or a bit smaller, larger than golf balls, but a fraction smaller. Some of them are the same size as tennis balls. You can hold them in your hand. They're made of like 10 different types of stone. Majority of them are made of sandstone, but there's granite, there's even crystalline stone, there's even diorite and things like this. There's some that are perfectly spherical, like balls, perfectly spherical. There's a couple in Ireland that have been found near La Creux, for instance. Most of them, about 80% of them, maybe 85% of them, are found in Aberdeenshire, on one side, the fertile side of the Grampian Mountains. Up there, they have this whole array of these specifically styled stone circles called the recumbent stone circles, which are like classic stone circles, but they have like a large flat stone on one side, like recumbent, and then two what they call flankers, like almost like horns sticking up out the ground on either side of it. So you have this kind of like a frame which is then used to observe the different sun and moon movements over the years. These are specifically lunar sites, and there's potentially hundreds of them, about 200 or 300 of these stone circles in that huge kind of area of like Aberdeenshire and generally that area. And they found 425 of these stone spheres.
Wow.
In total. I think 380 or so found in Aberdeenshire, but they found a couple in Ireland. They found 4, I think, in England, Cumbria, all up north, and there's one in Bridlington as well. They found, I've not worked out which one came from Bridlington. The interesting thing about Bridlington, Yorkshire, is East Yorkshire. Yeah, it's like, number one, you're right next to Doggerland going out into, but there's the largest megalith in Britain is there, the Rudston monolith inside this churchyard, which I visited this last summer, which is like 25, 26 feet tall. And that's bigger than anything else in Britain. The only one close to that is other ones in Yorkshire called the Devil's Arrows. But mainly, we went up to Aberdeen. Me and JJ did a road trip. We actually flew up to Aberdeen. We took a ferry over to Orkney. We spent a week there exploring, and there's a whole bunch of these stone spheres have been found at Skara Brae and different parts of Orkney, also on Westray and a couple of the islands. There's some fantastic examples in the Kirkwall Museum, which you can see. But the thing about them is that they're geometric. They have perfect geometry encoded within them. They have all the different platonic solids. I'm not going to list them all. They have variations of the platonic solids, like a cube combined with an octahedron, or a dodecahedron combined with an icosahedron, and these are all within this Neolithic landscape that they're found. The thing is, they're not found inside the stone circles. Mm-hmm. They're found in fields near stone circles, which is weird. Usually when farmers are ploughing them or people are just digging and stuff.
Hugh, what's the purpose of these stones? Do we know? I mean, you mentioned that there's 400 that have been found in Scotland alone, which is an insane amount. Like I say, do we know the purpose of them? Because, I mean, people have theorised before they were like an ancient form of bowls or something like this. That's not what they're for, though, is it?
No, the jury's still out, to be honest with you. I'm going to go through all the different theories in my lecture, but generally, the first thing people thought, they used to have string or rope wrapped around them, and they were used as weapons or throwing weapons like bowlers and things like this. But then it was found that not any of them really had any damage on them, so they couldn't have really been used for that. They're all formed originally from a perfect sphere. Even what's left of them, most of them have got 6 points or 6 faces. Many of them, they go up to like, some of them have got like 8 faces. Some are all the different platonic, sometimes Archimedean solids. They have spirals carved on them. They're very intricate. There's real artistic merit, really beautiful, like 3D geometry kind of carved on them. They're stunningly beautiful to look at. And I've managed to, I've saw about 50 of them on my travels, and I photographed and filmed every one of them. There's a video on YouTube on Megalithamania UK YouTube. People can watch a 30-minute little documentary that I made about them. And they're stunning. So they originally thought they were like bowlers or weapons. They realized they can't be. Other people suggest they're like amulets. They're like some researchers suggest they're like almost like this is how good I am at what I do as a stonemason. Let me help build your stone circle for you. Look, I can do this geometry. I can do this type of carving.
Sort of like Michelangelo and the Perfect Circle.
Yeah, they're like kind of like, like almost like a signature, like an example of your work. And there's different. I forgot the name of the guy actually. There's different different ideas about that. Obviously, I think one of another interesting one is the fact that they're not only found in fields and farms and things like this, but they're often like found in areas where it's very fertile. It's almost like some people have suggested that somehow they would charge these up, within the land, somehow do magical incantation and leave them in fields where they're growing their crops or where their animals are, and it would fertilize, sort of fertilize. Yeah, I mean, I think there's something in that people don't realize, because there's more to this than meets. So 'cause they're made of different types of stone, lots of different types. But the weirdest thing is that when I was down in South America, I found one in this museum, this Tiwanaku museum in La Paz. I was like, what? I was like, hang on a sec, this is 6,000 miles away. Yeah, so it kind of baffled me a little bit. I mean, I've written an article about this on ancientorigins.net website. I've got the video I mentioned already, but I could not believe it when I actually went there. There's a 6-sided one in the museum in La Paz that was found around Lake Titicaca, and I was like, what the hell is this doing here? And I've compared it, and it's exactly the same as other ones I've seen now. Exactly.
Oh, I think I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen it.
I've been to Bolivia, and I've been to La Paz, and I've been to Tiwanaku. So I think I know what you're talking about. I think I've seen it. Mm. It's bang on, isn't it? Is that related to the Costa Rican balls or anything like that?
Oh, well, the ones in Costa Rica are much bigger. They're like beach ball to, huge. They're like up to about 10 feet wide. So these are all designed to fit in your hand. And there does seem to be a standard measurement of them. There's a specific measurement. I forget what that is off the top of my head. But the idea that let's jump back a sec. The idea that there's some kind of ancient portfolio or like CV was put forward by a researcher called Jeff Nisbet. I just want to give him credit here. And he wrote this fantastic article about this. But we're still unclear. We're still unclear about this. We just really don't know. But when you look at like the Taui ball, which is the most intricately carved one, you can see it's got triple, double, and quadruple spirals and zigzags and all this different iconography carved all over it in precision way. It's amazing. This is in the National Museum in Edinburgh. Excuse me. And the spiral motif was what we find in Ireland at Newgrange, but we also weirdly find these exact same spirals at Tiwanaku in Bolivia, which I couldn't believe either when I went there. And I feature that in the article. I'm going to talk about that when I go, at Megalithamania as well. But I think people have to, these are just one of those things that sort of you don't. There's 3 on display at the British Museum. There's even 1 on display at the Salisbury Museum. They're mainly in the main Edinburgh Museum and 2 museums in Glasgow and on Orkney as well, at the Kirkwall Museum. And the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford has some as well, only like 2 or 3 of them. But they're quite remarkable. Some of them have like 50 or 60 nodules on them. So one of them was recently found in 2013 in the Ness of Brodgar on Orkney, and it's the only one that's been discovered during a controlled archaeological dig at an ancient site. It was actually inside part of Orkney itself, in Structure 10, I believe. And I actually went there. I spoke to the archaeologist about it. Nick Card, his name. He's the main archaeologist up there. Did a little YouTube video about it, and he's astonished that it's the only one ever that's been found actually within a site itself. But it looked like it was placed inside a wall and hidden there, like it was placed there as some kind of magical amulet.
Yeah, so some sort of totem or something like that. They kind of see,
But the fact is, you find in like sophisticated geometry, Pythagorean and Platonic solids, this kind of thing. several thousand years before Plato was even born. You know, we're talking like 2,500, maybe 3,000 BC at least. Or in the case of the Nessa Brodgar, we're talking 3,600 BC. And so Plato didn't come up with the Platonic solids till he was writing about them in the Timaeus and other such writings that he did until like 500 BC. And so, you know, we know that the British may have invented spherical and complicated geometries. We already know that from the stone circles. We know the geometries that are encoded within stone circles in Britain, some of them extremely ancient, that were rediscovered by Alexander Thom back in the 50s and 60s. And so, yeah, you just have to, you know, it's just one of them little things I've kind of drawn my attention, if you like, and I've become slightly obsessed by them. I've got some copies actually at home. I'm going to bring my friend Nicholas Cope, who's writing a brilliant book about the Nap of Howard. He's actually cast some, and he's going to bring some to the conference. People can kind of handle them, get a sense of what they're like. Maybe we'll get some ideas about what they're really used for. It doesn't seem like they were used for games, though. It doesn't seem like you know, they could have been. I mean, some people say they look like atoms.
Do you know, I've just been Googling that while you were talking, because it looks like a plasma state. Almost.
Yeah, it does. And it also looks like, if you like, microscopic pollen as well.
Yes,
you get the same thing. And so how they would know what things look like, whether they were shamanically trying to work things out. But one idea that I like is the fact that they're like healing stones. They were actually used, placed on the body, rolled over the body, you know, for healing purposes. They could have been energetic healing. It could have been like just like massage and things like this. They could have been used for things like that. I mean, no one really knows, to be honest with you.
So, Hugh, I mean, when you look back and you look at it, we interviewed Steve Strong, didn't we, Chris? He mentioned the singing stones of Australia. Could they be similar to them then?
What are the singing stones? I don't know what they are.
So they were magical rocks, Chris. Is this right? Supposedly,
Steve Stone's got a few. Yeah, he's got the singing stones are the magical rocks that he believes had power to move larger stones. And then there are the other rocks which he believes had the first language written on them in a sort of, which is a bit like Ogham, that kind of type of script, but it's got meaning, esoteric and regular meaning as well. So, yeah, I don't know. It could be related. Could definitely.
That could well be. That's interesting, actually, because if you're talking about a very early form of language, then perhaps, you know, one idea that's been, you know, like Plato and Pythagoras talked about this, is that the mathematics and geometry is part of the language. And so trying to understand that in a more kind of esoteric sense may have been part of their designs. Now, some of them have spirals, some have concentric rings on them. Some have strange zigzag and like patterns on them, which no one's ever been able to explain. So perhaps they were some kind of, you know, language or bartering tool or something like this. But, you know, they're very strange, and I you know, I've just become compelled by them, and so I'm going to share everything.
It's a fascinating mystery.
It really is.
Megalithomania. And the fact is, I'm going to be speaking about that megalith, but you know, it's just the fact is you only find them in very northern Scotland, like Aberdeenshire and Orkney and just a few other places. That's it. But it shows you connections between the stone circles of Cumbria, the biggest monolith in Britain, the Rudston monolith, and Ireland at La Creux as well. So to me, and now they found this one at the ring of the Nessa Brodgar, which is along the strip of land between the ring of Brodgar and the stones of Stonehenge. They know that it must date to at least 3,500 BC, and so this is like, oh, blooming, that's even older than people realise. It's older than the stone circles of Aberdeenshire, and so yes, it's kind of interesting. I mean, people can check out my video. I've written an article as well. If they just Google, I think, Scottish stone spheres, Hugh Newman, they'll find everything I've written and videos I've made about them, or they can, you know, come along to the conference. You know, come and
that'd be brilliant.
See some.
Is that your only obsession at the moment, Hugh?
Of course not. No.
What else are you researching at the moment?
Yeah. Okay. All right. A few things. I mean, I'm writing a book at the moment as well. So that's you know, it's all everything relates to megaliths in my world. So, you know, just, you know, people realize that, you know, Megalithamania, all that kind of stuff. But the next thing I'm doing is working on now, have been for about 6 months or a year, is a book about the British giants called The Giants of Stonehenge in Ancient Britain. Hopefully Jim Vieira is going to be working on it with me as well. He co-authored the last book I was involved with, the big book, The Giants on Record, about the American giants. Recently, obviously, written a book called Stone Circles that's come out last October, a wooden book. My just so people know, my wooden book Stone Circles is going to be featured in this larger volume called Megalith Studies in Stone. And that's coming out actually this year on the summer solstice. So people can get that. That's like a thick book. It's like 400 pages. It's got people like Robin Heath, Howard Crowhurst talking about Karnak and all the geometries, Alexander Thom stuff. Really, it's a beautiful book. I've seen an advanced copy of it. It's stunning. But yeah, I'm working. So this book about the giants of Britain is what I'm working on now, looking at all the traditions, all the actual skeletal evidence, all the sites they're found at, and their relationship with megalithic sites. And I think people are going to be surprised by what we're uncovering now about Britain, because
Hugh, there's a lot of evidence, isn't there?
Yeah, it's more than people would think. I mean, America is ridiculous. You've got more giant accounts than anywhere in the world. There were tribes, cultures, there were cities of giants over there, going back into history and prehistory. Here, it's a bit more sparse, but the further you go back and the deeper you look into the old records, and you have to translate a few things, we're finding things. It's just like quite remarkable. So we're going to see where that goes. We're only about maybe a third or halfway through that book, so we're still making discoveries. We're still.
I've got a link to send you actually here.
It's a great story.
For sure. And the one is, and I don't know if you might know this, Chris, when we were researching the island trip that I did last year, and we were looking at some paranormal activity and some stuff that we did there. But as a result of that research, I was looking back at an archaeological site or an archaeological brochure, I guess, like magazine or whatever it was from the late 1800s. And in it, there was an article about a giant who'd created this stone circle or something. And I'm like, literally just falls out of nowhere. I'm not looking for it. I'm looking for something different. And all of a sudden, this huge giant story just sort of pops out. I mean, obviously, Ireland's probably got an absolute shed load. I imagine Scotland's got. You're finding a lot of evidence, aren't you, for this then, Hugh, I guess?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, we're going to be digging our teeth into Ireland and Scotland as well. We've got a bunch of accounts we're working with, and we're going to just keep pushing forward with that, because it's just, I mean, you got such strong traditions. Some accounts they had double rows of teeth, which relates to the American giants. Scotland, you have a lot going on, but Wales is surprising. I've got this huge amount of data on Wales, and the Cower giants or Cower giants. So that's going to be a thick chapter, that one, I tell you that. And the thing is, that you're getting reports of bones and skeletons and everything else to fit with the legends. That's what's weird. The more you look, the more we're finding correlations. But what I like, and I think this is going to be of interest to people into like geomancy and ancient earth energies and stuff like this, is that there's such a strong connection between the ancient science of geomancy and earth energies with these giants, because all the stories are talking about the shaping of the landscape, the movement through the landscape, and the energies connecting up places, even ley lines going across, giants striding across the landscape and dropping stones from their apron, and that create megalithic sites and so on and so forth. So it's quite a fun book, because you're not just like looking at big bones and big skulls you've discovered. You're actually like interweaving it into the mythos of the landscape, which is something that came out originally, was put forward as a theory by Anthony Roberts in his fantastic book called Sowers of Thunder that came out in 1978, which is really who we're dedicating this book to, because it's a masterpiece, and he really was the first to really link giant lore and traditions with this aspect of the sacred landscape.
I'm just looking for some stuff now as we're talking about it. I'm just Googling. No, because, I mean, do you think the theory is then, Hugh, this is what I'm going with, that giants built all the stone circles and they got the commission by showing their amazing stone balls?
Okay, yeah, I think you just nailed my entire research.
There you go.
I didn't want to give the spoiler alert. I didn't want to give the story away for Hugh's latest book. No, but dude, is there something to this? Because you mentioned it yourself, and I agree with this. They've got to be all interconnected somehow. it's no coincidence, is it, that these things were found?
You look at it, because the more I look into, like for years and years and years, I've been interested in earth energies and the subtle energies hidden within sites in the landscape, how you manipulate them, and the healing effects and all this. That was a lot of my research was based upon that for many years, with the grids and all that kind of stuff. Then I moved into serious megalithomania. I've done for years, still in that, and moving into the whole giants thing, and you realise all this stuff to do with giants isn't just about big people. It's about their kind of knowledge, where they got it from, how their mythos is just encoded into the sites, and it's part of the whole big picture. I mean, these stone balls would be like marbles, tiny marbles. They'd be like specks of dust to giants. So if there's a connection there, I'm not, maybe, but the thing is, a lot of the traditions have, like they do in the Bible, for instance, have traditions of the giants building the sites, building megaliths, building big walls, moving stones. It was part of their thing. So you're right. If anyone was going to be building these sites, or certainly employed to build them by probably the normal sized, astronomer, priests, whoever they were, then they would get the giant tall people to do the heavy work. If they couldn't do it themselves, if their telekinetic abilities weren't up to scratch or something. Yeah, but who knows? This is a constant, ongoing
I think it's all woven into a narrative. Definitely, I also think fairy lore is definitely woven into that same picture somehow, because fairy lore is constantly associated with the barrows, with stone circles, with the ancient sites, and fairy roads are linked with ley lines. It's got it all. This folklore tradition has got it all interweave into it somehow.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think one of the things that intrigues me. I mean, look at some of the early stories of giants, especially down in Cornwall. That's where the real hub of it is, in England. They've proven now that many of these stories about giant slayers and Jack the Giant, all that kind of thing, Jack the Giant, the Beanstalk, all that. Some of them go back. They've proven absolutely that some of them are 5,000 years old. Absolutely. So we know they were talking about this stuff, and this was part of the mindset 5,000 years ago when they were building these sites. We know there's actual evidence of that. The first name of Stonehenge that ever got recorded in the 1100s was the Giant's Dance. That was its name. That's what it was called. The first ever illustration or depiction of Stonehenge was of a giant lifting one of the lintels into place with Merlin below him. It was almost being directed by Merlin, and the giant was doing the work. It's in a picture from the 12th century. It's like, but no one realizes the significance of that.
Yeah.
You look at the traditions that were written down in the history of the kings of Britain. A lot of it's probably made up, and to link it all together, all the King Arthur stories came from that. Giants everywhere in that so strongly. It's incredible. And then the origin stories of Britain, the origin myths of Britain, talk about Brutus coming over from Troy, defeating the final giants in Cornwall and Devon, Gog Magog, and all that came. They still parade giants around in London to this day every November. They used to parade giants around in Salisbury until a few years ago. There's an 18-foot giant effigy in the Salisbury Museum. They have them everywhere. It's ingrained into our psyche as a country. And so so it's just like just reminding people of that this is the thing. This is the thing we were all talking about. We were all aware of. This is probably based on reality. And if you look at you've got to be careful with these myths and legends, because a lot of them contain actual truths which people don't realize. You look at the stories of say there's actually a story. I'll give you one example. Yeah. Down at St Michael's Mount, there's this whole story of Jack the Giant Slayer. He's like this sort of hero figure, young lad, and he's getting tired of all the giants eating children and being cannibals and being mean and all this stuff. So he sets up all these elaborate tricks to destroy and kill them and all this kind of stuff. One of them is on St Michael's Mount. He kind of wakes up the giant, but he digs this big hole, covers it with leaves and twigs. The giant comes running out, falls down the hole. So there's Jack above him, and he hacks his head off, and it's completely violent, yeah. And it's forgotten about. The giant's been slaughtered. And then in the late 1700s or early 1800s, they find an over 8-foot skeleton deep inside this old crypt in St Michael's Mount. And no one knows about it. They found 9'4" skeleton near Stonehenge. They found a 14, but well, it's various different reports between a 12-foot and a 14-foot skeleton. It's found within 2 miles of Stonehenge in a mound. The list goes on.
Do you know, we mentioned it before, Hugh. We've got the giant and the cobbler, the story of the Wrekin that was up here, of course.
Yes.
Where are all these things? I mean, this is a huge story, isn't it? If there are a race of giants, and if they existed here within England, which there's good evidence to suggest that they did, where have they gone? I know you've talked about this before. The Smithsonian in America might have spirited a few away, but there are paper trails to it. But where are ours? You know, there are some, like you say, on display. But how come this isn't nationwide news?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think it was nationwide news. I think it used to be. I think it was part of our tradition, but it doesn't. You know, it just doesn't. It's not of interest to people anymore. It's like one of those things. It's kind of, you know, there's actually a giant's bones on display at Thirsk Museum in Yorkshire, for instance. No one realised 7-foot giant found in a mound up there. There's accounts in academic records as well. Even, you know, some of the bodies and bones that were dug up in some of the other mounds around Stonehenge were extremely robust and tall. I think there's you know, the problem is the ones in Britain were found so long ago that it's really hard to find any evidence. We know there was an extremely large thigh bone on display, potentially at St Paul's Cathedral in London for many years, or at Westminster Abbey maybe. There's other ones that have been on display in various places. So it's just a case of they've just got lost. They've just disappeared. They're like anomalies. People think it's all just gigantism. It's the same kind of principles at play in North America when all the giant bones were being discovered in the mounds in the 1800s. But here it was much longer ago, and there was a really strong Christian thing, and it didn't fit in with that. People didn't really want to believe the whole idea of Troy and Brutus and defeating the giants, but the traditions are maintained until this present day because Gog and Magog at the Guildhall in London, 2 versions of them are paraded around London at the Royal Mayor's Fair or whatever it's called every November, and so it's there. I mean, and also like one of the saints who's very strong traditions have been in Britain, in Cornwall, in Salisbury, and other places. St Christopher. Now, St Christopher, people don't realise, was a giant. He was a Canaanite giant, 12 feet tall, who came from the Bible lands, and he's a saint, and he's written about, and he's got churches and areas devoted to him and dedicated to him. So there's things like this, we're going to get into in the book, and we're going to find as much skeletal and bone evidence as we can and sling that all in there as well as giant artifacts, which are another clue.
Hugh, how long before the book's out did you say?
Well, we're still in the process. It's probably going to be either late this year, but more likely probably spring next year.
Spring next year. So you've got a book to do by next year. You've got Stonehenge to save in your pajamas, or not. You've got a conference coming up on the 12th and 13th.
Optional on that one.
The pajamas are optional. Preferably yes, if you don't want to be arrested. Nobody. So you've also got the conference coming up, Megalithamania, this July.
No, May.
May 12th and 13th, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then if there's anyone, we're going over to America for about a month. We're going to be. If people are over there, I'd love to meet anyone who's listening from America. I'm speaking at the Contact in the Desert.
Coming up.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of amazing speakers there. Sort of mixed between ancient aliens and ancient mysteries. It's very cool. And then I'm actually at this very large event called Alien Con, which is a whole bunch of ancient aliens people and sci-fi TV people in Pasadena and Los Angeles. I think that's on the 15th and 16th of June. And then I'm at Serpent Mound, which I really want to go back to. And I'm meeting my friends Ross Hamilton and Jeffrey Wilson, brilliant researchers. They run a summer solstice event, so I'm going to be there for that. Me and JJ are both speaking at that. So I'm really looking forward to that, and then we're back, for the World Cup, and then we're doing our little tour in July. So we've got a few things going on, and if people want to, see what I'm up to, they can check out just HughNewman.co.uk or megalithomania.co.uk. We do a bunch of tours every year to Peru and Mexico and Egypt and places like that. So we're busy.
Always busy, Mr. Hugh Newman.
Very busy, my goodness me.
The other website we mentioned today, of course, was it's stonehengealliance.org.uk as well. So go and check that out and subscribe and support that as well. It's at Stonehenge Alliance on Twitter. Hugh, thanks for speaking to us, buddy. We will let you go. We know you're pretty busy. Of course, you've just told us all of the millions of things you've got to do between now and next year anyway. We're going to check back in with you anyway in a few months because I want to know about this new book as well. I'm really interested because, like I say, there is so much research. I've just sent you a link about it as well. But Hugh, thanks for speaking to us tonight, buddy, on the Asylum. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hugh.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. It was much fun.
Wicked. Hugh Newman then on the Asylum. Peace out, be lucky. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you.
Asylum.